My name's Wolf, and through this series of videos I'm going to introduce you to the crazy over-the-top world that nerds like me love so much, that is Warhammer 40,000. So get comfy, buckle in, and prepare for a Noob-Splaining session. Luke, I am your father. Probably the most misquoted line and the best example of a Mandela effect ever. Why am I bring up a Star Wars quote in a 40k video? Well, you're about to find out. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. While ever an army has existed, they have deployed tactics to specifically counter other units. This over time has led to the creation of units that are specifically designed to obliterate other specific units. Light cavalry was invented to obliterate archers. In turn, spearmen were created to obliterate the light cavalry before they obliterated the archers. In modern day terms, we refer to these units as special forces, and the Space Marines of Warhammer 40k, even though they are genetically engineered killer machines, also have and need their own special forces. Today we're going to have a look at one of those special forces. That is the chapter Cash Grabs. The chapter of the psychic powered Grey Knights dedicated to the killing of just demons. Now, before we jump into the video, it's that time where I ask you to hit the subscribe button. On top of that, if you look in the description, you'll see I now have an affiliate link. That means you can get money off Warhammer, which makes it somewhat affordable. And, well, everything else Wargaming related as well. So go click on the link and buy some stuff. And finally, as always, at the end of the video, let me know if you liked it or disliked it, and leave me a comment if you found something funny or learned something new. Now, this video is being released a bit later than normal. That's because during the research of this I realised I was having a Mandela effect, which nearly resulted in me having a full nervous breakdown. Now, I've been in the world of 40k ever since its inception, so most of this basic lore stuff I recite straight off of memory. But as documented with my 60,000 year knack for the Necrons instead of 60 million years, I realised that my memory is not entirely perfect. So I started just doing a little bit more research than normal just to confirm in my own mind that what I'm about to say is correct. What I remember about the Grey Knights on the tabletop is that they were insanely powerful versus demons, and could be taken as an optional yet very expensive extra in Space Marine army lists, making them pretty much useless against anything that is not demons. Now, they came as a squad of 5 wearing Aegis Terminator armour and were equipped with Nemesis Force weapons that could turn even the powerfulest greater demon into sushi. Lore-wise, they were a specialist chapter where every marine was a powerful psyker and they trained only to kill demons. In the history of the Grey Knights, not one of them has ever turned its back on the Emperor and become a follower of Chaos. So all the really old codexes I checked had a small quarter-page section, maybe less, stating this, and that their gene seed is from some unknown source. As the literature I checked became more and more modern, it was pointing out that Nemesis Force weapons give the user +2 strength. Now, back when I was playing 40k regular, one of my friends had a sizable Blood Angel force, complete with a squad of Grey Knights. But because none of us actually fielded an army with demons in it, those Grey Knights were just an expensive upgrade and just gathered dust. Now, that rule of +2 strength is good against everything, which doesn't fit with my memory of Grey Knights being demon killers and not much use against everything else. Now, I'm that old, I can still remember the days when Stonehenge still had swings on it, but I genuinely thought I was having a Mandela effect. When the first Codex Grey Knights was released, complete with Space Marines in power armour, and not just a Terminator armour the lore at the time said they all wore exclusively, or so I thought, my instant reaction was, well, this is just a cash grab, as these guys are only good for killing demons. The more I researched them for this video, the more I was convinced I was wrong about them killing demons only bit. I was so sure that they had a special rule that made them really good at killing demons, and that's what Nemesis Force weapons were for. Even all the lore around them goes on about how they are trained to deal with the forces of chaos specifically. But all the rules I've read just make them a very, very tough army that can, in theoretically, go toe-to-toe with any other army and kick 7 shades of shoe polish off, and then head home to polish up their nice shiny silver armour and pick the remaining bits of bad guys out of the joints. So what do we know about the lore of the Grey Knights today? The Grey Knights are a very unique chapter of Space Marines, and I use the word chapter loosely. Now, they do not follow the Codex Astartes, which basically means they do what the fuck they want, a bit like Space Wolves. Now, Space Marine chapters are broken down into 10 companies, each of around 100 Marines, with the first company being the only company to field Terminators. Grey Knights organise themselves into 8 brotherhoods, and every one of them can and does field normal Marines and Terminators. And once a Grey Knight completes all of their training, I assume they use some sort of sorting hat to decide which brotherhood they join. For a long time, the history of the Grey Knights was kept very secret and mysterious. Although it was claimed they were created during the Second Founding, this is thought to be either a mistake or a cover-up. But after all, this is the Imperium and both could be just as valid. You think modern bureaucracy is a mess? Trust me, your government's incompetence is nothing compared to that of the Imperium of Man. Now, as the Horus Heresy books progressed, it became clear that the Grey Knights were being created by Malcador the Sigillite on request of the Emperor. I haven't really introduced Malcador because, well, he's dead now, but back during the Horus Heresy, he was the second most powerful Psyker after the Emperor himself, and also the Emperor's best friend, or the closest thing the Emperor has to one. The law looked like it was shaping up so that the Grey Knight gene seed might include some of Malcador's DNA, as well as the Emperor's, but that never came to fruition, which is a damn shame, as it would have been pretty cool to have Malcador as a kind of proxy Primarch. Malcador, towards the end of the Horus Heresy, took all of the potential Grey Knight recruits to Titan, which is one of Saturn's moons, gave them all the best guns and armour, stuck them inside a fortress, and then made Titan disappear into the warp, protected by a psychic web that he personally made. A few years later, just as the Space Marine legions were being broken down into the chapters, Titan returned to real space. But for the Grey Knights, the passage of time had been more closer to several decades. So instead of a bunch of raw recruits, they were all now fully armed and armed beasts that were not only Space Marines, but psychic Space Marines, and with them reappearing just as the legions were being broken down, you can understand why they are often mistaken for being part of the Second Founding. Just to clarify as well, the gene seed of the Grey Knights is purely from the Emperor, and not the watered down, messed around with stuff that other Space Marine legions have. Now, the choice weapon of any Grey Knight is the Nemesis Force weapon. Generally, this comes in the form of a two-handed sword or a halberd. As I explained in a previous video, the Force weapon is a double death, as not only are you being smacked by a giant sword wielded by a super strong Space Marine, you're also getting an explosive taser at the same time as it contacts you. A Nemesis Force weapon takes it to the next level, and instead of an explosive taser, it is an explosive warp power that is extremely deadly to other Psykers and demons, but does more damage than a normal Force weapon to a non-Psyker, especially fools stupid enough to be on the pointy end of a big stabby stick. Make Nemesis Force weapons slightly better Force weapons, so that makes them good against everything. Now, the original Nemesis Force weapons also had a twin-link bolter built into the handle somehow, so you could either hit things or shoot things. The newer models, however, have had that bolter removed from the weapon and strapped to the back of the gauntlet, which I think personally looks way cooler. You'll notice as well that all their visors have that sort of pointy look to them, like Optimus Prime's battle mode. Ironically enough, this isn't a case of Games Workshop stealing an idea because somebody watched the Transformers live action film. Grey Knights have always had that cool looking pointy visor, but now I think about it, the Transformers cartoons are a lot older than 40k. So one of the designers was probably an Optimus Prime fan. Something else we need to point out about Grey Knight equipment is they don't wear normal power armour or Terminator armour. Now, a normal Space Marine Psyker wears something called an Aegis hood underneath their power armour. That hood does not only help amplify their abilities, but also has warding rings to protect them from the nasty things in the warp, i.e. demons. Now, Grey Knight armour is Aegis armour, whether it's normal power armour or Terminator armour, and the whole of the armour enhances their psychic abilities, and also gives them psychic protections. And together as a squad, they can unleash much more powerful psychic attacks than an individual Space Marine Psychic can on their own. On top of that, they can of course shoot you with their bolters that have explosive bullets before making your insides now your outsides with a 6-foot explosive sword. So, overall, the Grey Knights are an insanely tough army with an insane amount of firepower, both downrange or straight up in your face and cut you into little pieces. This makes them expensive points-wise per model, so losing one on the tabletop reduces your potential firepower massively. Conversely, this also makes them one of the cheapest and quickest starting armies as you have less models to buy and paint. They're also one of the only two factions that I can think of where the paint scheme is pretty much preset, so I hope you like painting silver. So, as Grey Knights were intended to fight only the very toughest of the toughest demons, or at least that's how I remembered them, they generally don't have dreadnoughts, because the only way you can kill one of these bastards is by totally obliterating it before it totally obliterates you, and if you totally obliterate it, there's not enough left to go into a dreadnought. But for balance on the tabletop, they need a dreadnought type vehicle, so they get this fucking pointless abomination. I present to you the Nemesis Dread Knight. Yep, that's right. You take a Space Marine in powered armour and put it inside an even bigger set of powered armour. Needless to say, this thing is totally over the top and kicks ass. On top of that, you can choose to stuff your normal Marines in Rhinos or the Terminator flavoured ones in Land Raiders. And Land Raiders, let's not forget, are fucking cool. The Grey Knight Combat Patrol box you can buy only saves you about £15, but inside it you do get a normal squad, a Terminator squad, a Commander in Terminator armour and the Dread Knight, which all in all is a powerful fighting force. In fact, it's that powerful a fighting force it will kick most of the combat patrols straight in the box set. So the Grey Knights have weapons that lets them to go toe to toe with pretty much any other faction and kick the snot out of them with ease, yet the lore still goes on about how they train to fight demons and are only deployed against such demons. You can see why I'm having a Mandela effect now. If they were just to fight demons, then they are at best a niche army versus chaos, at worst a blatant cash grab to sell more Space Marines to more Space Marine players. So I went back through the 2nd edition Ultramarines Codex, and it had a small paragraph, literally less than a quarter of a page, talking about the Grey Knights and how mysterious and rare they were, and how they only fought demons, but nothing in the armour list for you to put a squad in your army. This was, however, the Ultramarine Codex and not the Space Marine Codex. I can't imagine the Ultramarines not having access to Grey Knights. So I went through the 2nd edition War Gear book, and there's not a single mention of a Nemesis Force weapon, let alone a Nemesis Force weapon that does extra damage to demons. So I went to the 3rd edition Space Marine Codex, and again there is the exact small paragraph from the Ultramarines Codex talking about how rare and mysterious they are, but no rules for you to buy them for your army. So in the end I came to the conclusion it must be my failing memory, and the fact that my brain is effectively pickled from multiple years of excess alcohol is causing me to misremember that the Grey Knights were only ever meant to be fielded against demons. And perhaps releasing them as a standalone army that is good against everything was not the blatant cash grab I always assumed it was, and with Games Workshop recently pretending to turn a corner and be a good capitalist behemoth that I want to believe in, I came to the conclusion my ancient alcohol-abused memory pulled a blindside on me. Yes, Grey Knights are special forces compared to normal Space Marines, but they are good against everything, not just demons, regardless what the lore says. Then, I found this. This is the approved War Gear card from 2nd edition. Specifically, I want to draw you to the line that says, a Nemesis Force weapon automatically wounds demons and ignores all saving throws. Now there are 3 dice rolls when it comes to combat in 40k. Hit roll, wound roll, save roll. The Nemesis weapons removes 2 of those 3 dice rolls, making them insanely powerful against demons, but overpriced Terminators versus everything else. I knew I was right, and the Grey Knights were nerfed and released as a blatant cash grab. And there we have it. Don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment. Better still, if you know somebody who could do with a bit of noob-splaining on Warhammer, and share this video with them. And at any point, if you've learned something or laughed, then please hit that subscribe button. I won't ever be doing a Patreon or a merch store, so that subscribe button is the best way you can show your support and thanks from me.